Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharma swarupine avatara varisthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. So we were discussing how Sri Ramakrishna's father Shudiram Chattopadhyay had to shift to another village because of the evil designs of one Ramananda Roy, who wanted him to falsely testify in a case. So he did not uh, bother about his own suffering, and he continued to worship Sri Ramakrishna, worship, take care of Sri Ramakrishna, and was young Gadadhar at that time, and also he continued his worship of Raghuveer. So difficult days came to them, and Shudiram remained indifferent to all sorrow and suffering. If we see that period of his life, he passed all his time cheerfully, holding fast to his Ishta, or to the Lord whom he considered to be an Ishta, Raghuveer. That you remember we discussed about that Raghuveer Shila, which was guarded by a snake, guarded by cobra, and he heard a voice that please take me and worship. I have not been worshipped for a long time. It was lying in the field. So after that vision, he felt that the Lord has a particular purpose, because of which he had to leave Dere and go to Kamarpukur. Of course, when he shifted, Sri Ramakrishna was not yet born. In fact, he was born in Kamarpukur. So Raghuveer, his Ishta, was the only focus of his attention. The service of his own God or Ishta, he was almost indifferent to sorrow or suffering. And some days, as we saw last time, there was absolutely no food in their home. In the beginning, they found it very difficult till they could settle there in Kamarpukur, but he remained unperturbed. He said, don't worry, if Raghuveer fasts, that means the Lord whom he served with so much of devotion. He says, if I can't give him any bhog today or any offering today, then if he fasts, then we shall also fast with him. So that is the attitude of a true devotee. He does not, under all circumstances, whether there is sorrow, suffering, or joy in his life, a devotee of God does not lose faith in him. That's the main point here. Despite their poverty, despite their difficult days, Shudiram's faith and dependence on God did not waver. That is the sign of a true devotee. That one who thinks that God is there to remove the sufferings only, and he never makes a person suffer, in the sense the body may suffer, the mind may suffer, but if one is attached to the Lord, if one is not attached to the world but attached to the Lord, then there is peace and joy. Underlying peace and joy is always there. That is the greatest benefit. And the devotee thinks that under all circumstances, good or bad, if the Lord is with us, then what is the worry? That simple-hearted Chandra Devi, his Chandramani Devi, his wife also followed her husband's example and continued her household duties, depending completely on Raghuveer, whom they were devotedly worshipping. So that is true worship. Somehow it so happened that whatever be the circumstances, some food would be obtained for that day. So they never had to fast, except for a few days, somehow or the other, in some miraculous way, because they never gave up hope. They knew the Lord will save his devotee. So With that faith, they continued their worship. So this was before Sri Ramakrishna was born. I'm talking of the nobility of his parents. Otherwise, why will Sri Ramakrishna be born in this family? Both the husband and wife, both Sri Ramakrishna's father and mother, they were uh, totally dedicated and devoted to Raghuveer, their Ishta. Now, soon, Sukhlal Goswami saw that he is suffering, is not able to earn enough money to support his family. So Shudiram did not suffer from scarcity of food. In the beginning, there was scarcity of food. He had just come to Kamarpukul, leaving everything behind in Dere village. So his friend Sukhlal Goswami gave him half an acre of rice field in Lakshmi Jhala. It is still there, that half acre land. So by the grace of Raghuveer, the land was producing so much rice, it, it was more than sufficient for the little family. And as was his nature, his noble nature, whatever surplus would be there, he would give it to guests and visitors. So Shudiram, then he found, as he was getting older, he hired a few farmers, few young farmers to plow the field. When the seedlings were ready, he would transplant a few bunches. He would start. Do you know how? I think you all know how paddy is uh, transplanted. It is soaked, it is planted, the seeds are planted. The seedlings, when the seedlings are ready, they are uprooted and then planted in a, first they are scattered in one small plot. And once the seedlings are ready, they are uprooted because they are still in water. There has to be a lot of water for paddy. And then they transplant the few bunches. And the rest of it, the younger farmers would do. He would take Raghuveer's name and tell the Lord, you see, my whole life depends on your blessings and grace. So if you wish, you can help me. And then he used to take his name and finish his task. And ask the farmers, once he has started the planting, the transplanting, rice seedlings are normally transplanted in a particular row in according to a particular order, so that when it grows it does not disturb each other, so the plants do not disturb each other. So that is what he did. And then we see afterwards that he would start himself, because he was old, he was not capable of working very hard. He was already old by that time, and some farmers used to pay them, some laborers, young laborers used to come and help him to do the transplant. That is when mostly during transplant you need lot of labor. After that you can manage the crop yourself. Only during transplant it is a habit, if you see, it is a tradition that you invite, each one helps the other farmer. Of course they get some remuneration for that, so that they can transplant the paddy quickly. It has to be done when the seedlings are ready. So each farmer takes the help of his friends and pays some of the young farmers who don't have their own land to come and work in his farm. It has to be done on time. So time just passed in this way. They were more or less slowly settling down in Kamarpukur. And after 2 or 3 years, Shudiram depended solely, as we know, that was his habit, on Raghuveer's Ishta, and lived on what chance might bring. So he was not very keen that he should have this or that. He was hard working, no doubt, and did his best, and whatever he got, he was satisfied. So his family, by the grace of Raghuveer, never lacked plain food and clothing. So you remember Sri Ramakrishna, when Narayan's father died, he was in terrible financial difficulty. So he went and he could not pray to Ma Kali. Though Sri Ramakrishna said, whatever you want, you go and pray. So he could not. And finally, because he only asked for devotion, shraddha, and other things. But he could not ask such worldly things from the Divine Mother. It simply did not, that prayer did not come in his mind. So when he went back to Sri Ramakrishna said, "Don't worry, by Mother's grace, your family will not lack plain food and clothing." That is what one should be satisfied with. That contentment, if it is there, then one is spiritual. So anyway, his needs were met, and he was obviously not a greedy person, so he didn't bother about earning more money or something. As long as they got enough food to be offered to their Ishta and share it among the family, and whatever little was left over, they would be uh, they would be giving it to the guests who often used to come. And some monks, as I told you, their village Kamarpukur was on the way to Puri. So a lot of sadhus passed. So he never hesitated. If he had some spare food in his, though they were very poor, though he had whatever he had, he somehow managed to share a small part of it with the sadhus or the pilgrims who were passing. So these 2 or 3 years of hardship gave Shudiram the peace, contentment, and also reliance on God, which the biographer says only a few fortunate real devotees of God experience. That's why Holy Mother once said, one among all the qualities, noble qualities of man, contentment, santosh is the word. So contentment is one of the biggest, the best qualities. If one has contentment, then he has everything. That is the basis of spirituality. So Shudiram got peace. That is one of the main results of leading a spiritual life. Though they never lacked plain food and clothing, that is not the goal of life. Because everybody in life, most of the people never lack plain food or clothing. The needs are always met. The problem with human beings is that the greed is not satisfied. If there is greed, if there is no contentment, then one cannot have peace, no matter how much you have. There will be always peacelessness to hanker for more and more. So contentment is a great virtue. Santosh, as they say, is one of the greatest. Holy Mother used to say, Santosher moto gun nai. Mane, there is no higher virtue, no better virtue than contentment. And of course, reliance on God, which he had. So the biographer says that Swami Shardanji says, only a fortunate few have these qualities, and that is why the Lord was born in this family. So naturally, when your needs are met, when you are not going after things in a greedy way, then you get lot of time. So his mind became naturally indrawn. When we say that God has created our mind with a tendency to go outward, a fortunate few, as the Kathopanishad Yama tells Nachiketa, a fortunate few manage to go inward. So who are that fortunate few? People with peace, contentment, and reliance on God, as Shudiram. That nature helps one. If one is happy, content with, if the needs are fulfilled, then you have a lot of time to become indrawn. Otherwise, if you are spending all the time, we have to calculate. Benjamin Franklin once said that when who became the president of United States, though it was said in a secular sense, everybody complains that there is no time. We don't have time to do spiritual practices and all those things. It's a very common problem with most of the devotees. But Benjamin Franklin said, I made a list, I decided, because he was a very successful president, but still people were not satisfied. Hundreds and hundreds of people used to come to get their problem solved. So he really found that there was a shortage of time and he could not do many things which he wanted to do. So he said, enough is enough. Let us make a timetable. So he divided his whole day into uh, how he spent his time. We made three categories. One is the most important things which have to be done. Second is which are important but they don't have to be done immediately. It can be done later. And some which are not at all necessary. It is just whiling away the time. So he divided, and then to his surprise, he found out of 24 hours, he's spending more than half of his time doing things which are not at all necessary. Not even, he spent only a few hours doing that which is necessary, and that which is not necessary right now, but it has to be done sooner or later. So he saw the first two categories, the list of jobs or list of work he has to do. They occupied very little time. So rest of the time he found that he was simply wasting. So here you find if his needs were fulfilled, then naturally if one does not have, he did not believe in socializing and going here, going there, minding one's own business, as we often say. Spirituality means minding one's own business. So his business was over. Maybe he cultivated his farm, then he was waiting for the crop. So what will he do during the rest of the time? A little, maybe puja and all sometime would be spent. So his mind was always indrawn. He used to worship his God with so much of devotion, and that made his mind indrawn. As the Kathopanishad says, only a few lucky people, Kaschid Dhiraha, only those who are steady minded and lucky, they their minds go inward. Otherwise, all the minds are going outward because they are not content with what they have. So during his morning and evening prayers, he became so absorbed in the meditation and the repetition of the mantra of goddess Gayatri that he became absorbed in her, as a Brahmin would do. They would be repeating Gayatri mantra. So he became absorbed in the Gayatri mantra and he slowly started experiencing divine visions. That is, the Pratyagatman was awakened, the heart center was awakened by constant and devoted interiorization, as it is known. When you go, when your mind becomes indrawn and you focus on the center of consciousness, you not only repeat the mantra with devotion, but you start getting wonderful experiences. And his chest would turn crimson. I mean, when the blood, they say, normally in Bengal and all, they would be sitting bare bodied. They would not wear, it was so hot. They just wore dhotis and while doing puja especially. So his chest would become crimson because when you meditate, the blood as it were flows to the chest. And that is one sign which Sri Ramakrishna used to point out, saying that, see, the people who do a lot of meditation in the heart center, their body becomes crimson. It becomes slightly red because of the excess flow of blood in that area, or the prana. The prana, as it were, focuses itself in the heart center. And his chest would turn crimson and tears of love would flow continuously. So that was the state he attained even before Sri Ramakrishna was born. In the morning, with basket in hand, he would pick flowers for worship. That is normally a Brahmin would do, and would see his family deity, the goddess Sitala. So as a 8-year-old girl, that is how she was worshipped, in the form of a small girl in a red sari. with different ornaments. That's how they worshipped. The Raghuveer came later. Earlier, the family used to worship goddess Shitala also. Shitala is a small goddess who was a small idol or small image which was worshipped as a 8-year-old girl dressed in a red sari. And with a smile on her face, he used to have the visions of Sitala also. She would accompany him, this Sitala whom he worshipped since childhood. She would literally come and pick flowers by bending the branches of the trees so that he did not have to strain himself. So these wonderful visions, which he had by the grace of the Divine Mother Shitala and also Raghuveer, his Ishta, these divine visions filled his heart with lot of bliss, and he was immersed in bliss when he used to worship and do his sadhana. So his firm faith and devotion could be seen on his face, and people he was always in an ecstatic mood. Seeing this serene and dignified demeanor, people were surprised. The villagers used to respect him, because when you manifest the divinity within, everything else is harmoniously arranged. As Swamiji once told in London, he said, if you manifest, if things are not okay around you, just try to go inward, meditate a lot, you'll find that everything around you slowly falls into place. Everybody is attracted. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, when the flower when the flower blooms, the bees come by their own accord. You don't have to invite the bees. Once the honey is formed, the flower blooms. So also, seeing his serene, dignified, and devoted inward look, the villagers realized and honored him just as they would honor a rishi. They knew of his noble nature, that he will never tell an untruth, and he was driven out of, in spite of his difficulties, his devotion to his Lord, to his Ishta. It was known to everybody, but seeing his wonderful demeanor or dignified and serene behavior, that steadiness which one could see in Holy Mother's life as well. Sister Nivedita was, when she first met Holy Mother, that is what she noticed, her stateliness. A stateliness normally does not come out of arrogance or some kind of self-importance. It is that looks very artificial. There are members of the royal or aristocratic family in those days also. They at least try to show that they are very stately. That is because of their wealth, because of their power, because of their position. But in Sri Ramakrishna's father's case, he was a poor Brahmin. But still, because of his uprightness, because of his dedication to truth, because of his lack of greed, because of his contentment above all, he was his uh, demeanor or he used to conduct himself in a serene or a dignified way in his life. And the villagers could see this. One cannot hide one's nobility, no matter how poor one is. It is not wealth or money or power or position that gives that kind of stateliness. So when he was bathing, upon seeing him approach, whenever he went to take bath, no, he demanded some kind of respect. He did not demand, he commanded, sort of. When he went, people used to spontaneously greet him. They would stop their idle chatter. See, that is what happens when you meet a person who is indrawn, who doesn't chatter or gossip. If everybody is gossiping, then you also feel that you should gossip. But seeing Sri Ramakrishna, seeing Sri Ramakrishna, seeing Sri Ramakrishna's father, Kshudiram, people would stop their idle chatter. When he went to take a bath, for example, to the pond, they would be gossiping. But the moment he arrived, they felt that, oh, they would feel shy, or they would feel uh, they are doing some injustice and they used to greet him respectfully, and spontaneously they just used to keep quiet, maintain that seriousness, that dignity. At least temporarily, just they would keep their mouth idle chatter for a time. That gossiping would stop. So while he was bathing, the villagers hesitated to enter the pond also. They were so respectful of him that he said, "Oh, he has gone to the pond, let us just wait." They didn't mind waiting for some time till he had finished. And that was the kind of respect. Having complete faith in him, whenever they had any problem, they used to come to him for his blessings during times of joy and sorrow. Whenever there was an event in somebody's family, or there was some grief, whenever something good or bad happened in the villagers' family, they used to go to him because they knew that his good wishes, his blessings would change the situation or would help them to consolidate the joy they had or remove the sorrow they faced. So they would go to him for consolation. That was his nature. Now, coming to Chandra Devi. Chandra Devi herself, like her husband, was an embodiment of love and simplicity. She captivated the villagers, whoever used to come, through her love and compassion. She was also, uh, just like her husband, she was deeply spiritual and full of love and compassion. Whatever little extra rice or whatever they had, they would not hesitate to share. So everybody considered her, especially the underprivileged people. They thought that she is like her own, like their own mother. So as they say, Lok Mata. So Rabindranath Tagore gave that name to Sister Nivedita. You don't have to be a biological mother to become a Mata. You become a Lok Mata. You show your compassion when you show that motherhood of God. When it manifests through you, you become a motherly figure. So that is how she was. And during times of happiness and misery, as they used to go to Kshudiram also, they used to go to her. And during times of no one else had such heartfelt sympathy for the suffering people in the whole village. So the poor knew that whenever they needed some food or something, Chandra Devi would not only give them food but also give it with so much love and care that they would come away gratified. That was her nature. Even the sadhus, it was very well known that her door was always open. Whenever some monks used to come to uh, Kamarpukur, they would know, because everybody would say that, oh, if you go to that house, you will get something or the other. They will never say no. She will never be rude to you. So mendicants also knew that her door was always open. They just had to go and beg for food, and the sadhus or the wandering monks used to get food. The neighboring children also knew, especially those who belonged to underprivileged families. Whenever they felt hungry, they would go to Chandramani Devi and they would get something or the other. So you see, both the father and the mother, they had so much nobility. Had such a noble character that all their neighbors in Kamarpukur, it was a new place. They were new to Kamarpukur. It was not their village. Because they were forced to shift, they had come here. So in spite of his own suffering and his own uh, precarious financial position, they would come to Khudiram's cottage at any time of the day, in spite of his suffering and poverty and his own uh, financial constraints. His home was an abode of peace and joy. So this was, as they say, preparing for the birth of the incarnation of this age. So that is how we have described now the noble character and life of Shudiram, Sri Ramakrishna's father, and Chandramani Devi, his mother. So Sri Ramakrishna once said that had it not been for their noble character, do you think I would have been born in that family? Even Holy Mother said about her parents. They were also very noble. Uh, Ramchandra Mukhopadhyay and Shama Sundari Devi. We'll come to that in Holy Mother's life. Now, there is a small paragraph on Shudiram's sister, Ramshila. As I told you, most of the names in that family, Shudiram, Ram is there. Rameshwar, Ram is there. Because their family deity was Raghuvir or Ram. All the names had this Ram. Even the girls were named after Ram, like Ram Sheila. Instead of Sheila, which is a very common name, Ram Sheila. Sheila normally means, it has two meanings. It is not just a stone, but it also means a noble behavior. Sheila. So Sheila means behavior. So Sheila means Ram Sheila, one who has noble behavior, one whose character is noble. So Ram Sheila, that was her name. And she was Shudiram's sister. So we have already mentioned that Shudiram had a sister whose name was Ram Sheila and two younger brothers Khudiram had, Nidhi Ram and Kanai Ram. So here also the Ram word name was there. Who was also Kanai Ram was also known as Ram Kanai. So in Bengal they just interchange the name Kanai Ram or Ram Kanai. It is same. When Shudiram lost everything during his conflict with the landlord Ramananda Roy of Derepur, his sister was about 35 years old and his brothers 30 and 25 respectively. 35-year-old was Ram Sheila. 30 years was where his brothers Nidhi Ram and Kanai Ram Kanai was 25. So all three of his siblings were married and had families. Ram Sheila was married to Bhagwat Bandopadhyay of Chilimpur, a village 12 miles to the west of Kamarpukur. So Ramshila was already married when these people shifted from Dere to Kamarpukur. She had a son whose name, this just to give the family, the branch of the family, because some of them will appear in Sri Ramakrishna's life. His uncle and aunt and the descendants also played an important role in Sri Ramakrishna's life. So she had a son Ramchand and a daughter Hemangini, that is Shudiram's sister. She had two children. During Shudiram's crisis, Ramchand was 21 and Hemangini was 16. Ramchand was then practicing law in Midnapur, which was little away. Hemangini was born at her maternal uncle's house at Derepur and was her uncle's favorite. Shudiram raised her like his own daughter and gave her in marriage to Krishna Chandra Mukhopadhyay of Shihor, a village 5 miles northwest of Kamarpukur. In the course of time, Hemangini, his sister, had 4 sons, Raghav, Ramratan, Hriday Ram and Rajaram. This Hriday Ram was one who served Sri Ramakrishna, as we'll say later. That was much later. So this Hemangini, who was a daughter of Ramshila, that is the sister of Shudiram. Ramshila was the elder sister. She was a sibling and she was married to Bhagwat Bandopadhyay. She had a son Ramchand and Hemangini. Hemangini's son was Hriday Ram. And she had 4 sons, Raghav, Ramratan, Hriday Ram and Rajaram. So that is how we trace the descent to Hriday Ram, who became very important. In fact, all the biographical details, most of the biographical details and the family tree and all those incidents that happened were obtained by Swami Shardananji, the present biographer, from Hridayram. So Kshudiram had two brothers, and it is not known because of lack of records whether Kshudiram's brother Nidhiram had any children. But his youngest brother, Kanairam, who was 25 years old when they shifted to Kamarpukur, had two sons. Ram Tarak, who was later on known as Haladhari, who also plays an important role in Sri Ramakrishna's divine play. And Kalidas, we don't hear much of him, but he had two sons, this Kanairam. Kanairam himself, or Ram Kanai, was very devoted and contemplative, like his uh, brother. Once he went to a yatra. Yatra is a folk play which they normally conduct in villages based on some historical or mythological story on Ramayana, Mahabharata and all. So they were depicting the banishment of Ramchandra to the forest. So that incident where Rama is asked by his father under the instructions of Kaikeyi to go to the forest. So Kaikeyi, Rama's stepmother, was plotting to send Ramchandra to the forest. So he was acting actually, but he imagined that it was so real and it nearly struck the actor. So that means he used to get involved in whatever he did. He was so upset, though he was just playing a role in the drama, he thought it was real and it really upset him. So he got involved in the play acting or the jatra which was being conducted. Nidhiram and Kanairam left Dere after losing their ancestral property and likely took shelter in the homes of their fathers-in-law. So Kshudiram somehow managed to get a house in Kamarpukur, but Nidhiram and Kanairam, they were living in that Dere family. When they were driven out by that landlord, they also had to somehow manage, and perhaps not much is known about them. And the most likely they took shelter in the initial stages till they got their own homes, in the homes of their father-in-law. So both were married, so their father-in-law would have given them temporary shelter. Now we'll come to one more Shudiram's nephew, Ramchand. Well, it is Ramshila's son was Ramchand Bandyopadhyay, was practicing law in Midnapur. He gradually began earning a good income. And because he was aware of his maternal uncle's distress, he began to give 15 rupees each month to Kshudiram and 10 rupees per month each to Nidhiram and Kanairam. So all his because he was the one who studied law and was earning some money. So he used to help his uncles, maternal uncles. So if Kshudiram did not receive news of his nephew for some time, he would become anxious and visit Midnapur. After staying a few days, he would return home to Kamarpukur. So a remarkable incident happened during one such visit. As I told you, this Ramchand Bandyopadhyay, who was practicing law, and his maternal uncles, as you know, they were driven out from their house in Dere. So naturally, they wanted some financial help, which he used to give because he was earning enough money. So he used to give 15 rupees to Shudiram, being the eldest, and 10 rupees each. That was a good amount. I mean, you could run part of your expenses, daily expenses or monthly expenses could be met with this. So whenever he fell sick or something happened, Shudiram used to be, because he was so much grateful to his nephew who was supporting all the three families. So that shows this incident which happened. It is an example of Shudiram's sincere devotion to God. So we'll see what happened. The Midnapur is just about 40 miles south of Kamarpukur. So one day, following a long period, there was no news from Ramchand and his family. So Kshudiram was worried. He was just wanted to know whether he is okay. So he left for Midnapur. It was sometime in February or March. At that time, because all these incidents we hear from Hriday, the bale trees were shedding their leaves, and until the new leaves grew, it was difficult to worship Shiva without this essential item, because Shiva Linga, when it is worshipped, you need bale leaves, and till March or April, you would not get the leaves. So, this lack of bale leaves would be a problem for Shudiram. So, early that morning, he left for Midnapur, walking steadily till 10 a.m. He reached a village, and because it was 40 miles, it was not easy to reach. Early morning, if you start, by 10 o'clock, he would reach one village. So he reached a village where he suddenly found that there was bale tree there with so many new leaves, which was out of season. He completely forgot about his journey to Midnapur, and he bought a new basket and a towel from the village, washed them both thoroughly in a nearby pond. He then filled the basket with fresh bale leaves. He was so delighted that I could not offer the Lord bale leaves, and suddenly finds a tree. So he forgets about his journey to Midnapur and collects these leaves from the tree, puts them in a wet towel, puts them in a basket which he purchases, and returned to Kamarpukur at about 3 in the afternoon. So instead of reaching Midnapur, he comes back. Immediately after his bath with the bale leaves, he so devotedly and joyfully worshipped both Shiva and Sitla for a long time, and then he ate some food. Till then he was fasting. Afterwards, Chandra Devi casually asked him why he had not gone to to Midnapur. He had said that he was going to Midnapur, and why has he come with the bale leaves and doing puja again? Puja with that. She was extremely surprised when she heard the whole story, and he had walked such a distance to worship the Lord with new bale leaves. So, next morning, again, after worshipping his Ishta, so much of devotion that shows the amount of devotion he had to his Ishta. So, after that, next day, that day he had to cancel. He came back, did puja, then he ate something. And next day again, he started for Midnapur to uh, fulfill that. So Shudiram had already spent about 6 years now in Kamarpukur. So his son Ram Kumar, his eldest son, was 16 years old. Daughter Katyayani was 11. So that was a marriageable age in those days. So he began to search for a bridegroom when as she was of marriageable age. 11, 12 was the normal age. He gave his daughter in marriage to Kenaram Bandopadhyay of Anur. Anur is a small village, just 2 miles away from northwest of Kamarpukur. At the same time, he arranged for Ram Kumar to wed Kenaram's sister. So daughter was married to the Kenaram Bandopadhyay and his sister was married to his elder brother. So it was a sort of exchange. I mean, that is how he arranged. That saved a little because they were not having enough money. So by marrying off his daughter and the brother to his own brother of that girl to he gave his daughter in marriage to Kenaram Bandyopadhyay, and Kenaram's sister was of marriage who was of marriageable age. He married her to Ram Kumar. So who had just finished, Ram Kumar was the eldest son, had finished his courses in grammar and literature and was studying Hindu law at the time of his marriage, because that was the scriptures had to be studied. They had to be good in all these things if they wanted a job in a temple or somewhere else. So after 3 or 4 years, another 3 or 4 years passed after these marriages took place. By Raghuvir's grace, Sudhiram's financial condition now by this time had improved, and he had continued his his indrawn life full of meditation without any worry. He knew that something will happen. Whatever happens will happen for the good only. So in times of trouble, in times of sorrow, he never lost faith. And without worry, full of contentment with whatever Lord decided to give him, he continued his spiritual disciplines. That was one thing he did not stop. His worship, his puja was the primary thing in his life. All other worldly duties, they were secondary. He did it dutifully as any father would do, but they were secondary for him. So at this time, unfortunately, the close friend Sukhlal Goswami died suddenly. So Kshudiram was saddened by his friend Sukhlal's death. Because of him, they could come to Kamarpukur. So uh, seeing that Ram Kumar, his eldest son, had matured and assumed some family responsibility, Kshudiram felt that now he should go and concentrate on other things, as Hindus normally did. Noble families, they followed the Vanaprastha ashrama. So he was almost preparing for Vanaprastha. He had the opportunity to concentrate on other things, that is spiritual things, because his son looked after. Once the son grows and starts earning money, then the normal trend was that you don't bother your head with worldly matters anymore. That is known as Vanaprastha. It's a slow withdrawal, a slow withdrawal from the businesses of the world. So at some stage you have to withdraw, otherwise there is no end. You wait till the son gets married, then you wait till the son gets children, and then wait for the son's son to get married. So these things did not bother him. Once he knew that he has fulfilled his duties, his son was educated, and he was on his own feet, he decided to visit holy places. In those days, going on pilgrimage was so risky, especially Rameshwaram, which is 1,000 miles away. So people, when they went for pilgrimage, they never knew whether they would return. Anything may happen on the way and you may suddenly die. So pilgrimage means it was a kind of real Vanaprastha where you went prepared to depend totally on the Lord. And because he was a Brahmin, he could get food anywhere he wanted. He would just beg for food, cook something, and then go on and on and on walking, because there was no train and other things. So in 1824, much before Sri Ramakrishna was born, long before Sri Ramakrishna was born in 1836, he left for Rameshwara on foot. Rameshwaram is the the southernmost end of India. So he bought a Barnalingam to Kamarpukur from Rameshwar. He walked all the way, such a long journey, and began worshipping it daily. So the Shivalinga he brought from Rameshwara, that Rameshwara is Shiva's place. They say even Ramchandra worshipped Rameshwar Shiva before he started his battle with uh, Ravana. Before attacking Lanka, it was in the Rameshwar temple. It's such an ancient temple. So Sita and Rama worshipped. On his return, when he rescued Sita, she also worshipped at Rameshwar, because he had worshipped Rameshwar before he started the battle, before he rescued Sita. So Ram Kumar, Shudiram brought a Badalingam, a stone image of Shiva. The Narayan Shila is flat, whereas the stone image of Shiva is Badalingam. It is slightly oval in shape. So that he brought all the way from Rameshwar, and he began worshipping it daily. Even today, in the Kamarpukur shrine, we can see this linga, which Badalingam, which stone emblem of Shiva, which Rameshwar had brought. It is still being worshipped, and adjacent to the stone image of Raghuveer. So Rama and Shiva both are worshipped, and the consecrated water pot of Shitala. So all the three, if you see the shrine, the family shrine in Kamarpukur, where even now today a descendant of Sri Ramakrishna, of Sri Ramakrishna's family, Khudiram's family, they worship all the three. That is how They have maintained the tradition. The Rameshwar Shila, the Raghuvir image which he got guarded by a snake, the Manalingam we brought all the way from Rameshwar, and their family deity, that is Shitala, who was worshipped in a water pot. They were all, they are even today, they are worshipped. So in 1826, long after, uh, in 1826, that is 2 years after this pilgrimage, Chandra Devi gave birth to Rameshwar, that is the elder brother of Sri Ramakrishna. Because he was born after Kshudiram returned from Rameshwaram, he was named Rameshwar. So the Ram word would be there, like Ram Shila, Ram Kumar. He was named Rameshwar. He was just the elder brother of Sri Ramakrishna. So we will, I'm having some problem in the throat, so I'll conclude today. There'll be no questions. Yes, somebody is asking why my voice is different. Yeah, I just have a sore throat and a little cold. So I will conclude today. We will have Raj Yoga class tomorrow as usual. Okay. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.